The moment a baby is born, everyone in the room is waiting for one specific sound. Not a heartbeat, not a movement, a cry. The second that cry happens, you can feel the entire room relax. But why? Why does one loud, ordinary sound matter so incredibly much? The real answer isn't really about the sound at all. It's about what that sound proves is happening deep inside a newborn's body. And stick around, because there's a genuinely surprising myth about childbirth we need to correct along the way. Something most people, including many parents, still believe that isn't actually true. Let's get into it. To understand why the first cry matters, we need to start before birth even happens. Inside the womb, a baby's lungs are completely filled with fluid, not air. That's not a problem. The lungs aren't being used for breathing yet at all. Every bit of oxygen a fetus needs comes through the umbilical cord, from the placenta. The lungs are essentially offline this entire time, just quietly developing for later. This is completely normal. A fetus never needs to breathe air while inside the womb. Then birth happens, and everything changes within seconds. Once the umbilical cord's oxygen supply stops, the baby's brain detects it almost instantly. Rising carbon dioxide and shifting chemistry in the blood trigger a powerful reflex in the brainstem. That reflex says one thing, urgently: breathe, right now. Cold air hitting the skin and the sudden physical sensations of birth add to that urgent trigger too. Within moments, the baby takes an enormous first breath, pulling air into lungs that have never used it before. So where does the actual cry come in? It's really a natural byproduct of that first big breath. As air rushes out past the vocal cords during that forceful first exhale, it naturally produces sound. A strong, loud cry is a good outward sign that a baby is moving a lot of air forcefully and effectively. It's less about the crying itself and much more about what it reveals: real, working lung function. A vigorous cry is essentially audible proof that the breathing transition is going well. Now here's that surprising myth I mentioned earlier. Many people believe a baby's lungs get squeezed clear of fluid simply by passing through the birth canal. That squeeze does happen, and it does help a little. But it's not the main mechanism at all. Research has shown that mechanical squeezing only accounts for a small fraction of the fluid actually cleared. The real driver is hormonal, and it starts before birth even begins. During labor, a surge of hormones like cortisol and adrenaline floods the baby's system. Those hormones flip a switch in the lung tissue itself, activating tiny channels called sodium channels. Those channels actively pump fluid out of the lungs and into surrounding tissue to be absorbed by the body. It's a genuine biological pump, not just physical pressure from squeezing through the birth canal. This hormonal explanation leads to a genuinely important real-world medical finding. Babies delivered by planned C-section, especially before labor ever starts, often miss out on that hormone surge. Without labor, there's no buildup of those fluid-clearing hormones beforehand. This is a documented reason why these babies have a higher rate of a condition called transient tachypnea. That's essentially temporary, fast, labored breathing caused by leftover fluid still sitting in the lungs. It's usually not dangerous and typically resolves within a couple of days with monitoring. But it's a great real example of how much that hormonal transition actually matters for healthy breathing. The first breath does something else remarkable too, completely separate from the lungs themselves. Inside the womb, blood mostly bypasses the lungs entirely, using special shortcut pathways. There's no need to send blood to the lungs before birth, since the lungs aren't handling oxygen yet. The moment those first breaths inflate the lungs, pressure changes inside the chest shift dramatically. That pressure shift triggers those old shortcut pathways to begin closing, some within minutes. Blood gets redirected through the lungs for the very first time, picking up oxygen the normal way. It's a complete rewiring of how the baby's entire circulatory system operates, triggered within moments of birth. Let's get specific about those shortcut pathways for a moment, because they're genuinely clever engineering. One is called the foramen ovale, a small flap-like opening between the heart's two upper chambers. It lets blood skip the lungs entirely while inside the womb, flowing straight across instead. The other is called the ductus arteriosus, a small vessel connecting two major arteries near the heart. It reroutes blood away from the undeveloped lungs and out toward the rest of the fetal body instead. The moment breathing begins and pressure shifts inside the chest, both of these pathways start closing up. The foramen ovale usually closes functionally within minutes to hours, though full closure can take longer. The ductus arteriosus typically closes within the first 1 to 2 days of life in healthy newborns. It's an incredibly precise, fast-acting system considering how much has to change all at once. This is exactly why doctors pay such close attention in the first minutes after birth. In 1952, an anesthesiologist named Virginia Apgar created a simple scoring system to check newborn health fast. It's called the Apgar Score, and it's still used in hospitals around the world today. It scores 5 quick things: heart rate, breathing effort, muscle tone, reflex response, and skin color. Notice breathing effort is right there as one of the 5 key factors, checked within the first minute of life. A strong cry is one of the clearest, fastest signals doctors use to judge that breathing effort in real time. Before this system existed, newborn health checks were far less consistent between hospitals. Different doctors and nurses often relied on personal judgment, with no shared, standardized system. Apgar's scoring system gave everyone the same simple, fast checklist, usable within about a minute. That consistency made it much easier to quickly identify which newborns needed urgent extra help. It's considered one of the most impactful simple tools in the history of newborn medical care. And a strong, healthy cry remains one of the fastest pieces of information inside that entire system. So what happens if a baby doesn't cry right away? Medical staff don't just wait around and hope. There's an immediate, calm, practiced response. They may briskly rub the baby's back or gently flick the soles of the feet to encourage a breath. Here's the myth correction moment. Doctors do not slap newborns to make them cry. That's an outdated misconception. That idea comes from old movies and folklore, not from actual modern medical practice. Gentle stimulation is almost always enough to encourage that first breath in a healthy newborn. If breathing still doesn't start, trained staff have additional tools ready, like gentle suction or assisted breathing support. Beyond that first moment, a newborn's cry keeps being useful information for a while. A strong, robust cry is generally a reassuring sign of good lung function and energy. A weak, faint, or unusual-sounding cry can sometimes point doctors toward checking for other issues. Some specific cry patterns have even been studied for links to certain neurological or developmental conditions. This research is still developing, and cry pattern alone is never used as a standalone diagnosis. But it shows that even something as simple as a cry carries genuinely useful medical information. Quick pause before we continue. Take a guess. Do you think a completely silent, non-crying birth always means something is seriously wrong? Not necessarily. Some healthy babies breathe well without a big dramatic cry at all. Let's clear up a few more common myths before we wrap up. Myth 1. A baby's first cry means they're in pain or distress. Not accurate. The cry is primarily a mechanical result of forceful breathing, not necessarily an emotional pain response. Myth 2. Doctors always need to slap or shock a baby into breathing. We already covered this. Gentle stimulation is standard practice, and it's usually all that's needed. Myth 3. A quieter birth automatically means a less healthy baby. Not true. Volume matters far less than actual breathing effectiveness, which doctors assess directly. Myth 4. Fluid in a newborn's lungs is squeezed out entirely by the birth canal alone. As we covered, that mechanical squeeze is only a small part of the story. Hormones do most of the real work. Myth 5. Every C-section baby definitely struggles with their first breath. Not true. Most C-section babies transition just fine. The risk is statistically higher, not universal or guaranteed. Many factors influence the outcome, including whether labor started naturally before the surgery. Let's wrap up with a few fun extra facts. Newborn cries typically register between about 60 and 90 decibels, roughly as loud as a vacuum cleaner. Researchers have found that mothers can often distinguish their own baby's cry from other babies' cries within days. Some studies suggest newborn cry melodies can be subtly shaped by the sounds and language heard in the womb. This is still an active area of ongoing research, not a fully settled fact, but it's a genuinely fascinating possibility. Premature babies often have notably weaker, higher-pitched cries due to still developing lungs and vocal cords. That's actually useful information too, helping medical teams tailor extra care appropriately. One more fact before the recap. In multiple births, like twins, each baby usually has their own separate transition. One twin crying strongly doesn't guarantee the other will transition at exactly the same pace. This is exactly why medical teams monitor each baby individually, even when they're born just moments apart. Okay, let's bring this all together. A baby's first cry matters because it's audible proof of a massive, sudden biological transition. Lungs switch on for the first time, fluid gets actively pumped out by hormone-triggered channels. Blood flow reroutes through the lungs for the first time ever, completing a full circulatory rewiring. The cry itself is really just the sound of all of that happening successfully, all at once. Doctors use it, alongside the broader Apgar score, as a fast, real-time signal of a healthy transition. And that classic birth canal squeeze explanation turns out to be only a small part of a much bigger hormonal story. All from one simple, universal sound almost every person on Earth made once, but never remembers. If this answered a question you never knew you had, that's exactly what this channel is about. So if you enjoyed this, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. It genuinely helps this channel grow, and it takes about 2 seconds. Drop a comment and tell me which part surprised you the most. Was it the hormone explanation? The C-section connection? Let me know. And if you like this video, go ahead and tap that like button. It's a small click that genuinely helps this channel keep growing. There are hundreds of everyday questions just like this one waiting to be explored. Moments everyone has experienced or witnessed, but never actually questioned. That's what this channel is all about. Toggling your curiosity on, one question at a time. One more thing before you go. Tap that notification bell too, so you actually see it when the next video drops. Next time, we're tackling why flamingos stand on one leg for hours without falling over. It's a surprisingly clever energy-saving trick, and you will not guess the mechanism. I'll see you in the next one.